Welcome to a very special edition of The Piano Men with Stanley Carr. We've got a very special guest tonight. Joining me here is Bennett Burnside. He's a native from Ohio, and he has spent the early years of his life immersed in Columbus and Dayton's thriving jazz scene. In 2005, he relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, and ever since he has been deeply immersed in country, pop, rock, jazz, blues, R&B, and soul. With over 17 years under his belt, playing live, recording, and writing, Bennett is no stranger to charts, numbers, chords, and notes. He has rightfully established himself as a supportive sideman and a great studio/road hang, as well as a more than capable MD. Welcome to the show, Bennett.
Thank you, Stan.
All right, let's get into it here. Tell me about your upbringing. Where did you grow? You grew up in Ohio. Tell me about some of your earliest memories.
Well, yeah, we grew up in a little small town called Bellefontaine. It was about an hour from everything. And just as a little kid, me and my three brothers and sisters were homeschooled from the time we were little kids to about 11, 12. That's when we moved to Nashville and started going to public school. So homeschooled all those years. We lived on a big, like 2 or 3 acres. So we got to play outside, but that's when I started piano lessons, was 8 years old, actually. And so over the course of, I guess it'd be about 3 years from when I was taking piano lessons in Ohio to when we moved, I had, I think, 2 different piano teachers who were both great. I think Bill Barrett was his name, and then Mary Louise Carlisle, I believe, was the other woman's name.
Okay. Tell me about your homeschooling. How difficult was the work compared to public school?
Not very. It was pretty easy, and there was a program called K-12. It was like one of those, homeschooling programs.
Sure.
So we did that, and it really wasn't too hard. No.
I know your dad and sister also play. Tell me about that. Tell me about what made you really want to pursue it the most.
Sure. Well, I mean, to be honest, it's just who I am. I can't help it. I can't change it. And I've talked to a lot of people over the years about it. People who are full-time working musicians, people who just do music for fun, people who are kind of in the middle and don't know where they want to be.
Sure.
And I've really honestly come to the conclusion that if you're meant to be, either you're born with it or not. If it's what you're meant to do, you can't change it. You can't change it. So it's honestly a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely. And I know you've worked so hard. Tell me about some of the influences of some of the people you've really aspired to be like.
Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, I can honestly say I've learned something from every single piece of music I've ever heard. I think every day is a learning opportunity, and you learn so much constantly, and things that have nothing to do with music that I experience and people I interact with and situations that happen, they influence music. They influence your mood. They influence what you want to listen to. They influence how you're playing. They influence your feelings. It's everything has influenced me, really.
Sure.
I don't know how else to put it.
Do you remember some of the first CDs or cassettes you grew up listening to?
Yeah, actually, when we were in Bellefontaine, I was probably 9, 10 years old, maybe even younger. And I remember going to the Bellefontaine Library. And seeing the Led Zeppelin Best of Later and Early Days.
With
the 4 members with the astronaut suits.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going home, putting that CD in the CD player, and I heard that boom, 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 that the intro to Good Times and Bad Times, Good Times, Bad Times. And I just remember hearing that, and it just did something to me that I can't describe. I'll never feel that way again. But the second that song hit, it changed me. I just knew it.
It's like a life-changing moment, That's when you knew, like, this is what I want to do. Like, it's like escapism.
Yeah,
From the real world, you know. So tell me about, you moved to Nashville in 2005. What made you guys want to relocate?
So my mother was from Toledo, Ohio. My dad was from an area called Indian Lake, Ohio. And so they met somewhere in between those two places. I don't remember. But most of my family's from Ohio, and that's where we grew up. But after a while, my folks, they're very hardworking, very forward thinking, very intelligent. I think they just started to realize that there was only so much them and their kids could do in that town that we lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And they just wanted more opportunities for them and us. Sure.
Do you remember some of the first gigs you remember going to see, like your dad playing?
Yeah. We would go to see him on some of his jazz gigs. He did a lot of jazz quartet gigs, which would be drums, bass, and guitar. He was a guitar player.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'd have organ trio, which would be organ, mm-hmm. drums, and guitar. You know, sometimes there'd be quartets. And sometimes he'd do 3 or 4 hours of solo guitar work. So just, that is taking jazz tunes, you know, from the 30s and 40s and arranging a version to where you're playing the bass, the chords, and the melody all at the same time, which it's hard enough to do on piano with 10 fingers. To do that on guitar with 4 that you're using is unbelievably difficult. Mm-hmm. But he did it well. He's great.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Now, I believe, is he a piano tuner? Does he currently work as a piano tuner?
Yeah, that's his main job. He's been doing that for 30-something years.
Wow. Yeah. That's a pretty neat job, too.
It is. It's different. You don't meet many people who do that.
Yeah.
Different.
And so walk me through your first few gigs. What was it like for you starting out playing in public?
Sure. Well, I think the first public gig I was probably 9 years old, and it was a piano recital through Mary Louise Carlisle, that teacher. Mm-hmm. And we did it at a medium-sized church there in Bell Fountain. Mm-hmm. Calvary Baptist Church, I believe was the name of it. And, you know, there were, I don't know, 50, 60 people maybe a bunch of kids had their recital. And I just, you know, I was 9 years old. I was nervous beyond anything and had like 6 or 7 foot grand piano. It was wild, but that's how you learn. That's how you get over that stage fright, you know?
Absolutely.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. You can keep talking. I was
just going to say, and, you know, you and me grew up here a lot together, you know, as teenagers. And
yeah.
And we went to that music camp together, actually 2 different ones.
Yeah.
Kids on stage and
the jam.
And I don't have to tell you, especially in this area, you meet these guys, and especially a lot of girls who have been singing since they were like literally 5 and 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And they're so used to it, and they're incredible, as you can imagine. So that be honest, I forget where I was going with that, but that, that learning those things from an early age, that gives you such an advantage when you're older.
Absolutely. Definitely it helps to meet like-minded people who want, and I think being around people that are successful, I think helps you get better and it makes you want to do better. So you were playing those gigs at first. Were you nervous when you first started taking lessons or starting to play? I mean,
yeah, I guess so. You know, like anybody, I was always very self-conscious. So
sure,
there's a certain amount of nerves that went with that. Yeah.
What style did you start learning with, and what style do you feel you fell in love with eventually as you started progressing?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, like I said, I everything I've learned from that I've heard, but my dad listened to a lot of jazz growing up, and then he listened to a lot of really good 70s rock, 70s pop rock, 70s soul rock. So actually probably the earliest memory I have is listening to Asia, the Steely Dan album.
Yeah.
my dad played it all the time.
Love it.
So from an early age, I heard a lot of those minor 7 chords, major 7 chords, and diminished chords, and 4/5 chords. And I truly believe from an early age that kind of implanted this love and this sense of music that's a little beyond just pop music. You know, minor 9 chords, a major 7, and I mean, just one thing. I'm sure you've heard that. That intro. Yeah. That is, let's see, what is it? There it is. So that, you know, Home at Last, that Steely Dan song. Yeah. I have such an early memories of hearing that. Another band that has some really good like piano, kind of that same kind of funky groove, I think, was Chicago with Saturday in the park, and then it goes into that do 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 do. It's got that like groove. It's just, you feel it, and it's just so positive, man. When you just play it, it makes you feel all kinds of emotions. But yeah. So not only did we go to camps together, but we attended probably, so apropos, the greatest school on the planet. You know, gosh, yeah, hell yeah. We went to NSA. Tell me about, you know, do you remember auditioning? Do you remember your audition for getting in? Oh, gosh, yeah. So I was actually zoned to go to Centennial High School here in Franklin, about 20 miles south of Nashville. And it was literally less than a week before school was supposed to start. And Laura Hill, you know Laura. Yep, Laura's great. She let me and my mom know, just kind of out of nowhere, about Nashville School of the Arts. Her daughter, Savannah, was going to. Yes. So there was already a list of kids, a waiting list of kids that wanted to get in. That was several hundred kids long, if I remember. And Laura, being the sweetheart she is all the time, I think somehow kind of got me in there, got me into an audition right away with Dr. Satterwhite. Yep. That was the guitar teacher there. And I got in, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I learned so much from that school. Oh, man. It shaped the rest of my life. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, man. I think probably a highlight for me was getting to hear you play in Pop Ensemble with Mr. Griffin. Oh, just a uniquely group of musicians, just talented. What was it like working with Mr. Griffin in Pop Ensemble? Well, Mr. Griffin's awesome. I mean, he's what you call OG. Yeah. You know, Army National Guard, has been doing it for decades and decades. You know, he's very knowledgeable about music, orchestra, jazz band. I mean, he directed 3 or 4 different genres of musical group. That's hard. You know, there's not a lot of guys who know a lot about jazz and also a lot about orchestra. Sure. It's kind of 2 totally separate ends of the spectrum, but he was knowledgeable. He's an awesome sax player. Oh, sure. Beautiful. Amazing. I mean, I was listening to a video of his the other night, and he's still got it, man. Richard Griffin's an amazing, talented musician. And then, of course, you had Dr. Satterwhite. Yes. And I know he mostly did guitar. Did you like his program too? Yeah. I definitely learned stuff from him. He wasn't quite as type A as Mr. Griffin. He's a lot more laid back and just different kind of teaching. But yeah, I learned a lot from him for sure. And what was it like performing during like the recitals, the concerts, I guess I should say, that the school used to do? Did you enjoy playing with in the Pop Ensemble? Yeah, absolutely. So that basically, I mean, you know, that consisted of 1 or 2 electric guitars, keys, bass, drums, 5 or 6 singers, and a couple horns. So it was really good learning from an early age how to work with other musicians in
Yes,
band, which is possibly the most important skill if you want to make a living doing music.
absolutely.
And getting a feel for all their musical style. You know, when you're a teenage musician, 99.9% of you, me, you know, teenagers overplay everything, you know.
Sure,
And in
sure.
that group, I played guitar, and sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, why did you do that? Why did you play so many notes? Just sit back and listen, you know. But
Mhm.
I learned so much from him.
Oh
Griffin
yeah.
was awesome.
And then of course we talked a little bit about earlier with KOS and the Jam. Plethora of different people that went there. Lots of teachers, successful people like Walter Egan and John Pavlovsky. Uh, Tell me how did you? Let's talk about KOS first. Tell me about how you found out about it and what drew you in as far as that program went.
Sure, sure. Well, somehow or other, my mother got hooked up with Gene Cotton,
Mm-hmm.
who was the man who started that program and continued it for many years. And she volunteered and helped out a lot, which allowed me and my sister to get in and
Mm-hmm.
start. And Kids on Stage was cool because, you know, there was paper mache programs, there was acting programs, there was, you know, sculpting, there was every kind of art.
More than just music.
Yeah, absolutely. So like anything, I learned a lot from that over the years.
Who are some of your favorite instructors there?
Oh, favorite instructors. Ken Stanley was great.
Mm-hmm.
He's just the most fun, laid back, positive guy. Walter Egan was pretty funny. I liked hanging out with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Gosh, there were a lot.
And of course we learned songwriting from Gene. I think you were in one of my songwriting classes.
Yeah.
I think so, maybe. I think we took songwriting maybe 1 or 2 years there. But I definitely remember that being a highlight for me there. And of course that spawned the Jam Camp. Obviously, I'm sure Laura, I think, may have told you, or you found out. Tell me about how you found out about Jam Camp.
Um, I think it was pretty much the same situation. My mom was kind of looking for ways to get to get me and my siblings doing something during the summer, so we wouldn't get in trouble with things. So
yeah, sure.
that kept us occupied. And
and there were and again, like Walter was there, and I know several other instructors. So, what were some of your favorite genre? For those who don't know, Jam Camp had some of the most incredibly talented musicians you could work with. They had a lot of different bands that Laura would put us in, and you'd hear like all this different insight, get all this different insight about the music business. What were some of your favorite styles of music that you got to play with there as a student there? We'll start with that.
Well, the cool thing about Jam was, like, and you remember this, you'd sign up a couple months beforehand and you'd say, I want to be in the rock band or the country band or the jazz band.
Yep.
And so they literally had different classrooms for different genres. So it was a great place to choose to learn
Sure.
something new. It wasn't always fun to learn something new. You know, a lot of kids there, myself included, just wanted to play what they know and show off. But
yeah, exactly.
That ain't how you learn.
No, we had clinic band and we had the showcase band. Those were like the two bands that we were put in. So what were some of your favorite styles that you got to be in, and some of the teachers you got to work with there?
You know, one of my favorite teachers, and as far as our personal lives and our family lives go, we interacted some for a while, is David Toledo.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the man.
Yeah, he is, man. And his whole family, just hardworking, talented, just it's funny. At the time, I remember, because I used to have kind of a crush on his daughter, Gabrielle.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I remember their parents wouldn't let them do anything. They were never allowed to go out. They always they went to CPA, which is a very prestigious private school.
Yes.
And I just remember thinking, can't do anything with this girl. The parents won't let him do anything. And now looking, I'm like, I see why they were like that. They were some of the most hardworking, focused kids.
Sure.
And Wesley, the oldest brother,
Yes.
son, Wesley's been on, I think, CSI Miami.
Yeah. He was on Broadway too, I think, maybe at one point.
He might be, yeah. Just talented, all of them.
Oh man. I wanna say for me, I think well, they were all great, but I think John Pavlovsky was one of my favorite teachers there. Just easygoing, like really like wanted to make sure you knew what you were doing and just wanted to have a good time. I think he was just, Walter Egan was another one. Like being with him, and oh man, like we had all kinds of genres of music there that you got to pick. What were like the favorite genres of music that you got to learn and study with? Because I know that there were quite a few.
Yeah, but probably maybe pray, but it might have been Latin with David Toledo.
Sure.
David's actually from Cuba.
Yes. Yeah.
He was born in Cuba, and so that's who he is. It's in him. He's got that Latin rhythm. So he'd get the Latin band, and he'd have like 2 or 3 percussionists. He'd have a drummer. He'd have 2 or 3 guitarists, 1 or 2 keyboardists. He always had a lot of guys, and it was really cool watching him direct each person and have them fit their role in the song exactly.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do when you have more than 4 or 5 guys on stage. It's hard to keep everything balanced musically.
And it's probably tough too. It's probably the most challenging group to work with when you have that many people on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course he was kind of like Mr. Griffin. He was if you didn't do something right, he'd look you in the eye. But you learn from people like that.
Absolutely.
I love him. He's great.
I had him, I think it was like maybe 2014 maybe it was, and we did a couple Santana songs, and there was like one song that I think it was like Smooth, like the piano part for some reason I kept messing up or something, so we were like working on these different like ways to get me to learn it, and like we had videos that I videoed on his phone, or I think it was his phone, and then he sent it to me to my email, and I learned it. It took me like 2 to 3 hours to actually get it right, and he was like concerned that I wasn't going to be able to learn it in time. He was like, "Oh, great!"
That sounds like him, man.
He's, and he always told me like never be afraid to like screw up. If I made like some like mistake, just go on and do it, Yeah. But yeah, I enjoyed having David as a teacher. Just a really great guy all around, and I also like the classic rock bands. Like John Pavlovsky taught one that I was in, and Andrew Case was in. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but yeah, I was in the classic rock bands. What were some of the other ones? Because there were a lot of good ones.
There were great ones. Do you remember Mel Deal?
Yes.
He actually, it's really funny. His wife, when she was like in her 20s, babysat my dad in Ohio.
Wow.
They happened to know each other. And then however many years later, he met Mel when he was in his, I don't know, 30s or 40s. And then he found that out, which is just funny. But no, Mel's the coolest guy, man. Mel's another OG. He's not trying to impress anybody. He doesn't care. He knows what he's good at,
The De Silvas were also good instructors too. James and Mario.
Yeah, Mario became to be one of the, if not the most in-demand jazz guitarist in Nashville.
Yeah.
Like he was playing with some really heavy names.
Wow. Absolutely. That wouldn't surprise me, because he's totally chill as well. So you guys, one of the highlights for the Jam Camp, for those that don't know, people got to network. It was also a networking place. It wasn't just a social place. It was also a place to meet other people, to network, and maybe form a band or so. And I remember one year, you and Andrew Case and Charles all Charles Myers all got to form a band that would eventually become known as the Case Study. And man, I tell you, I enjoyed hearing you guys play, when you guys were together. And tell me about how you guys formed.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I enjoyed playing with them. I mean, I was probably the least good musician in that entire band. Charles Myers, who now plays with Yeba, for those who know who that is. He's always been phenomenal. And the funny thing about Charles is he's not the most creative guitarist, but he's the kind of guy who can learn a part note for note and play the absolute heck out of it.
Okay.
That's it's kind of like a mix of like creativity and music, but also type A personality.
Sure.
And it's interesting to meet different musicians and see their personalities sometimes that don't seem like they would be the personalities of a musician. And it's really cool to watch how that interacts with their music and their career. And I've got nothing but great things to say about Charles. So he was actually talking to Andrew, and they had been, I think, talking about a band, and Charles came and asked me. So, I was like, yeah, why not? We'll try it out. I mean, It'll probably be just like another band that's together for 2 months and
quits.
It ended up being a little more than that. So it was cool.
And I believe you guys played, I think it was one show at Kimbrough's, maybe it was. It was like one of your first gigs. I think I remember going to that one. But you guys did one set, I think it was at Mickey Roo's in Franklin. And you guys played almost 2, if not 2.5 hours worth of material. It's just phenomenal. You had Jake Martin on saxophone. You had Grayson Probst on background vocals. And who else was in that? 2 other guys, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So there was Colton and Chipper Hammond.
Yeah.
And Colton was a bass player, Chipper was a drummer, and they were fantastic. And their dad is Mark Hammond, who's a pretty respected Disney composer.
Oh wow!
So I know he's done some music for some big Disney movies. And if I'm not mistaken, he actually most of his work is he composes the songs that are played from the floats when Disney does a float parade at Disney. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Isn't that random?
I know, man. It's just you'll never know who you meet and who you wind up working with, because that's pretty big.
Yeah, it is. And he's a super nice guy, unbelievably good at what he does.
So we'll kind of play a little cut from the EP that you guys put out. We'll go with Subtle Minded here. Cool. Tell me about how this one was recorded.
It was, all of these songs, Andrew wrote all of the lyrics and most of the music. So we went into the Castle. It's a recording studio in Nashville, and we spent not long, like 2 days maybe, recording all these songs. It took almost a year probably for everything to get mixed and compressed and ready to go.
So we'll go ahead and play Subtle Minded. This is Bennett Burnside here on the Piano Men. And we're back with the Piano Men here. We're chatting with Bennett Burnside tonight. Why don't you do a little demonstration for us, a little day in the life of the piano? I know you had something you wanted to show me.
Sure, yeah. Well, I thought I would kind of maybe real briefly just do a explanation for those who aren't necessarily musical or those who are kind of looking to get into it, about a day in the life of a piano player in Nashville, which is going to be a little bit different than like New York or LA. The cool thing about Nashville is it's still in some ways a pretty small town. People, there's still fairly small circles. If a producer likes a player, he's going to call that same player over and over. People still like A-list players and, big songwriters and, even country stars will still go out and hang out, and you can meet people and it's a cool place in a lot of ways. So a day in the life of a Nashville musician, a big part of his job is just going out and meeting people. You know, some people say networking. I prefer to just think of it as meeting people, making friends, you know, because people in music work with their friends, you know.
Absolutely.
So if you were to go into a session, you'd probably get a chart and you'd work off what's called the Nashville number system. And basically, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Let's say you have a song and goes C, G, or C, F, G, C, which is most blues songs. You've heard, everyone's heard that, you know. So what that is going to be is you're going to have, as far as the C scale, there's only 12 notes, well, I guess 13 notes in the scale. No, excuse me.
There's 8, right? Because you do the octave.
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including the octave. You'll have to excuse me. I look like an idiot. So you're going to have 1 and 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So on that 1 chord, you're going to have the major. On the 2 chord, it's going to be minor, 3 chord, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and major. So if you were to read 1, 4, 5, that's 4, 4. But if a singer needed to move it up a whole step, that's why you have Nashville numbers. So say it was in C, it's 1, 4, 5. Let's move it up to D, 1, 4, 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great concept, whoever came up with it. And it's a very cool concept. Yeah.
After the band broke up, you started touring with Lance Carpenter and The Union. Tell me about that experience.
Well, that man, I learned a lot. That was probably my first like real gig in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And I actually played bass in that group. And so Lance is from Arkansas. He moved. He's been in Nashville, 8-9 years maybe. Mm-hmm. And Lance is he's an incredible songwriter, first of all. Just he's one of those guys, every single song that comes out of what he does is just quality. Mm-hmm. And he's also one of the greatest people I've ever met. Like he's one of those guys who can walk into a room with 200 strangers and walk out being friends with all of them. And I learned a ton from him about how to interact with people, how not to interact with people, you know. But that was great, man. I met a lot of good players through that. Mm-hmm. I got to do that was great. And right when I joined his team, that's shortly after Love Me Like You Mean It. Do you remember that song?
I think so, yeah.
He wrote that. So that was Kelsey Ballerini's first #1, I think.
Wow.
That kind of put him on the map.
Nice.
And so he's been doing better and better ever since. So it was cool to kind of see what comes to a writer, an artist, once they have a hit, you know?
Absolutely.
It was cool to see from the inside how that all works, really. You
also got to work with Irlene Mandrell. How was it working with Irlene?
Irlene, oh, she was really sweet. Just the most laid back, kind, great singer. Yeah, nothing but great things to say about working with her.
What can you tell me about the creative side of the business versus the business side of music?
Well, I think a lot of people, when they see being in the music business from the outside, they think it's parties and playing big shows and getting paid a bunch of money and being friends with celebrities and just party all the time. It's not that way. It is constant work. You're going to work a lot more than 8 hours every day. You're going to face discouragement constantly. I mean, it's your paycheck is not guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So it requires a lot of faith, mainly because where your paycheck's going to come from, you know. And it requires a lot of self-discipline, almost as much, if not as much as honestly having a 9-to-5 job would.
Absolutely.
But it's just a different kind of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as how the creativity works into that, you know, that very serious type A part of the mind, a lot of musicians, some musicians, I shouldn't say a lot, never really made themselves use that. They're creative, and that's all they want to do is be creative, and that's awesome. But there's a lot of the other side to it in Nashville that you really have to learn.
What can you tell me about your experience being on the road? Was it different from playing in other cities versus playing in locally?
Yeah, absolutely. I love traveling. Love it, love it, love it. It is partly because, like I said, it's a commodity other places. Here, there's so much of it, people get tired of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But like, for example, I remember this one little point in one little place in Whitney Point, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I played with an artist called Colby Oakley. He was a country artist, really nice guy, great singer, good guitar player. And he went to high school there. It was a little small, you know, blue collar town.
Sure.
And he went to high school there. And so this was 4 or 5 years later after he graduated. We went and did a show at his high school. We played in like the auditorium, and it was pretty full. I don't think it was packed, but people came just to see him because he was Colby Oakley.
Yeah.
Now, if you, who went to Nashville School of the Arts, said, "Hey guys, I'm doing a live radio interview at NSA in the auditorium," how many people would come? You know, if I did a show there, how many people would come?
Yeah, exactly.
Not that many, because
right.
They see this stuff all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough to get your fan base out to go to the shows. That's why it's important to kind of circle around other parts of the world, and that's how you kind of bring people in, is, you know.
Most artists and bands in Nashville are country.
Right. Absolutely.
Most music that comes out of Nashville is country. Not all of it, of course, but it seems like when artists play shows in Nashville, it's more about getting the right people to come out, getting good pictures for the social media. It's using it more as a tool than as a way to get new fans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think another thing too, man, I just lost my train of thought. I think the other thing was maintaining that base, like putting out new products, you know, distributing content, you know, because if you don't have a lot of content, you know, how are you going to keep your fans around? You know, they're going to drift off into other parts of the interweb, you know, or somebody else, you know, may have a song out or a single out. They're going to flock to them because these guys don't have new material to work with, you know, and it's tough for the people that are in the band, you know, the session players, the you know, people, the supporting acts, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's as soon as players start to get established, you know, they're playing decent sized shows and they have a decent band to travel in, and the chances are somebody's backing them up financially. Chances are they're already started to get a team working. You know, they might have somebody doing social media. They might have a manager. They might have the investor. You know, they might have a producer who wants to work with them. So, you know, the higher up you kind of get, you know, and on the chain, the more it's easier to keep putting material out.
Absolutely.
It's really just those first few years starting out from the ground up that it's all on you. Social media is on you, putting out new music, writing, co-writing, recording that music, making videos if you want. I mean, there's a lot to do.
Who are some of the people that you've been writing with here in Nashville?
There's a good amount. Maybe one of my favorite writers is a guy named Adam James. You know Adam James.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy.
He is. Great guy and fantastic songwriter.
Sure.
So I love writing with him. There's another guy, Tyler Cates. I like writing with him. Gosh, it's funny. You say it, and now I can't think of any. Rachel Ray, believe it or not, that is her name.
Not the chef.
No, not
the chef.
Yeah.
Not the TV host.
No. There's so many great writers here.
And I'd like to think that also the pop and rock scene has kind of developed here a little bit. You're seeing a lot more indie artists kind of make their way here. Do you feel that I know it's predominantly still a country town. Do you feel that the scene's kind of changed at all, since you've been here?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of venues, like, you're right, like little pop, like rock venues, little indie venues, places that don't look great, and it kind of attracts a certain kind of fan for music, But the thing about, like, and this is my opinion, I could be totally wrong about this, but the thing about country music here is that business-wise, it's based here.
Yeah.
Business-wise, I don't know how much is really going on with indie music. I think there's doing shows and people are enjoying it, but I don't think anything's really
true
huge is coming out of it.
Right.
A lot of national attention is
right
from it.
I think it kind of like varies. I know LA is probably the biggest hub as far as like the pop commercial side is concerned, but I think you're seeing a lot more underground shows, and people are playing more stuff like at like the Basement or like a venue like that. You're seeing a lot of these different up and coming artists play, so it's pretty neat, like, to get kind of a different perspective. The longer you're here and the longer you're around, people go, oh, Nashville, it's a music city, oh, it's a country town, and then you actually are here longer than a week and you go, wow, look at all these different shows that are playing and so many people. And it's like, yeah, you see all these country people, but you see people like maybe somebody that's got a rock band that's based here, or has like an indie act going on. So it's the variety, I think, has really changed, and it's grown so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And not everybody realizes this, but Nashville is actually the capital of Christian music, contemporary Christian music.
It is, yes.
Most of it's recorded is here.
We've got Lifeway Publishing here. I know we've got we've got Christian radio here, of course, too, but we've got all these different like faith-based organizations that work with music, with publishing. So that in itself has pretty made Nashville a stronger outlet than it used to be. If you go back to like the 70s and 80s, maybe even earlier than that, when it was all Opry stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So what else have you done? Are you doing like any writing by yourself? You have any compositions? Maybe we can hear something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna do a little tune for you guys called Days of Wine and Roses.
All right. That's great.
There you go.
Thank you.
That was some of you probably know that talent too, and I just kind of did a little playing around with the time, more of a kind of a mix between Freeform, what's that called? Not avant-garde.
Improvisation.
A la tiempo.
Yeah. Yeah.
just kind of interpreting with the rhythm, and then of course the other, mostly what you hear in jazz is swing.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of tried to
Have
play
you done?
between those two a little bit, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Have you done any like improvisation with any of the jazz tunes that you've done, or?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like in most jazz gigs, how it works is you'll have a song like, here's the music for, if we can do it. Here's the music for Days of Wine and Roses.
Mm-hmm.
So in most jazz gigs, what you'll do is you'll play once through the head, it's called, then you'll do a section for solos. So each member, each part of the group gets a solo, and then you do once more through the head to close it out, then the song's over.
Oh, wow. That's really nice. So tell me about what's next for you. What do you want to do?
Really the ultimate goal is to be on a big, great tour with great music. Like, I'd love to get hooked up with like Keith Urban or Derek Trucks band, or Tedeschi Trucks band, excuse me. Just anywhere with good, positive people and good, positive music.
Well, Nashville certainly is a very great hub for that. I know there's, we talked a little bit about LA, talked about New York. That'd be a fine place to go play as well. I mean, there's certainly all kinds of places in the country to play. You've also played at all these festivals, like the SXSW Music Festival. Tell me how that experience was like for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's the South by Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
Southwest, yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Austin's a cool city, and we got to go and play in this club and open up for Plain White Tees, so that was fun.
That's pretty neat. They're a pretty big act, so definitely a highlight for sure. And you've played at the Opry, of course. You've played at AT&T Stadium. Wow, man, what would be like the ultimate mecca for you as far as like venues? Where would you like to play? That's like a goal of yours.
Oh gosh, yeah, Madison Square Garden's obviously pretty legendary. That would be fun to say you did it. Red Rocks, I think would be great to be able to play there.
Definitely.
Hey, I want to go to a show there. I haven't even been to a show there. I'd love to just see one.
Well, hopefully after the virus passes, you can make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be great, man.
So where can people find your music?
Well, to be honest, I don't really have much music online. So mainly what I do is I'm what's called a sideman. So artists who have music will call me and be like, hey, I need you for this run or this show or this tour. And I'm just a sideman. I'm just supporting the artist. So that's 90% of what I've done is just be a sideman. Now, I will say in the last few years, I've really started taking songwriting more seriously, taking vocal coaching, trying to just get better. So that having my own music out is on its way for sure.
And I've listened to you on YouTube, and you've got a great voice. Keep it up. And I think it should be something to be said about the importance of a sideman. I think the sideman is just as important as the lead, and I feel like not as many people really know how valuable a sideman is or side woman is. Briefly, we've got a little bit of time. Just tell me about the life of a sideman or side woman.
Sure. Well, a lot of it's kind of what I was saying earlier, like a day in the life of a piano player. It's a lot more work than it looks like. It's a lot less thrilling than it looks like. It's a lot more discouraging than it looks like. But again, a big part of it's just going out and meeting people, supporting other people's shows, going to social networking events that are going on. That's how you get work.
Yeah.
People move to Nashville and say, how do you be in music? How do you get work? How do you get gigs? That's how you do it.
For sure. Well, we could sit here, talk more about the music business. And but we are out of time, and I just want to thank you very much for coming on the show. It means a lot.
Man. Thanks for having me. This is
No problem.
Cool thing to do.
Yeah. All right. This is Stanley Carr, The Piano Men. You can like us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Piano Men Radio Show. We're also on YouTube. Got a YouTube page. Check out all our previous interviews there, and I'll see you next week.